Okay, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Diane Wenger. Dr. Diane Wenger is a resident of Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania, where she is an active volunteer for Historic Schaefferstown. She taught courses in American history at Wilkes University for 16 years before retiring as a full professor in 2019. Her publications include books and articles on early American business and PA German culture and architecture. Her article, Saffron, Use Among the Pennsylvania Germans, appeared in Der Reggeboge in 2002. Please welcome Diane.
Okay, how's the volume? If I don't use the mic, are you good hearing me? Not so good, okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I changed the title of my talk slightly, as you see, because as I began to work on it, I realized it wasn't just saffron use among Pennsylvania Germans, it was a real love affair. So we'll talk about that this morning. First of all, this afternoon, how many people here grew up eating saffron? Okay, most of you. Okay. Okay. And you still cook with it?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you make with it?
Oh, hot pie, corn soup, noodles.
Okay, alrighty. And did you say you grow it too?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else grow it? Okay, great. Okay. Anybody here never heard of saffron at all? Good, okay. Well, I became interested in saffron about 50 years ago when I was working part-time at Netzley's grocery store, which is a small family-owned store in Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania. And I worked from 4 to 9 p.m. a few nights a week over the supper hour. And the owners of the store, Sam and Matilda, and their daughter Priscilla, who lived next door, sometimes would share their evening meal with me, because there I was, without dinner. And often that meal was chicken pot pie, which I know you all know in this part of the country is not a pie at all, but a stew. Other times, the meal was just bow tie noodles cooked in chicken broth. Both were delicious. And both of them were seasoned with slender red threads that I soon came to recognize and enjoy as saffron. And this was my first encounter with it. I grew up in Jonestown, which is in the northern part of Linden County, and although we do have Pennsylvania German ancestry, I had never heard of saffron. Certainly my mom and grandmother had never used it. But at Netzley's, where I worked, we sold saffron. It was packed in yellow paper envelopes, and we kept it close to the cash register since it was expensive and it would be pretty easy for somebody to shoplift it. And to my great surprise, many of our customers came in and asked for saffron. Now, I was surprised because Pennsylvania Dutch are thrifty people generally. And I couldn't figure out why so many of them were routinely buying a very expensive seasoning. So I became very curious. And fast forward now to the 1990s, I was taking a folklore class at Penn State Harrisburg, and we did a lot of reading about foodways. That is, what, how, and why people eat certain things. And when we were assigned a research project, I knew I wanted to investigate saffron use among Pennsylvania Germans. Why were they willing to pay so much for a little envelope with a spice? So I had my first research question. And for that paper, besides researching saffron in print sources, I interviewed 4 longtime residents of Schaefferstown area. Edna Hammer, who lived in Flintville, not far from here, and Mabel Hay, who lived on East Main Street in Schaefferstown, who was my neighbor, and a brother and sister who lived just a little bit further down the street in Schaefferstown, John and Martha Pickernell. So I sat down with them and we talked about saffron use. As I went about my research, I discovered another surprising fact. Not all Pennsylvania Germans use saffron. I learned that there's a saffron belt. Lebanon, Lancaster, and York counties, also a little bit of eastern Berks, and that's where saffron is used extensively. But in other Pennsylvania German counties, Saffron is pretty much unknown, and the exception is part of Montgomery County, and we'll talk about why that's so in a little bit. Use or non-use of saffron actually in the past distinguished Pennsylvania Germans from each other. Just the way, if you go to Lemon County, there's one word in the dialect for chicken, but you go to Berks and there'll be a different word. Saffron, same thing. And it was so well known in the past that they even joked about it. They called those who favored saffron Dutch, yellow Dutch. So now I had a second question to answer. Why do some Pennsylvania Germans love saffron in their cooking, while others have no use for it? So I finished that research, wrote my paper, got my A, and a few years later, in 2002, I revised the paper for the article in Reggeboge. So when I was invited to give a talk on saffron last year, I decided I better update that earlier work. So this time, besides looking into print sources, I had the benefit of the internet. I didn't do any more interviews on saffron, but with the help of a couple friends, we conducted an informal survey of second and third generation Pennsylvania Germans. And I had a very simple form, pretty much like the questions I asked you at the beginning of this talk. So this is my survey. And I had over 40 responses to it. And where did you grow up? Where do you live now? Did your family cook with saffron, and what did they use it in? Do you cook with saffron? And any other additional memories that you might want to tell me about saffron. So I overheard somebody behind me talking about what saffron is, so I know at least two people know what it is. But it comes from the purple flower of the Crocus sativus, which usually blooms in October. Don't go out and pick what's blooming now, because that's not saffron. And there is also another fall blooming crocus variety, which also is not saffron. So if you're looking for bulbs, you want to ask for saffron crocus. Saffron bulb, well, let's take a look at it. You can see the part that's saffron, the yellow, the yellow at the bottom is not saffron, the red stigmas that are sticking up, that's your saffron. To harvest saffron, you have to do it by hand, preferably in the early morning before the sun gets too hot, when the flower is nice and fresh. Each blossom contains 3 of those stigmas, the red thread-like parts. That's your saffron. And over the growing season, each bulb will produce 3 flowers. So now you've got them picked, and you pick the whole flower off. Now you have to carefully remove those stigmas, those threads, by hand. Then the saffron needs to be spread out on a cloth or a paper towel to dry. I cover mine with another cloth and just let it dry naturally, but some people, if they have a lot, might want to put it in the oven to dry it at a very low heat. So, as you can imagine, all of this is very time-consuming. Because of the labor involved and the small yield per plant, saffron tops the list of the world's most expensive spices. If you want to buy a pound, it would cost you $2,336. So just in case you're curious, here's the other 9. Saffron is at the top. Mela, which is an aromatic spice made from ground cherry pits. Vanilla bean, organic fennel pollen, long pepper, cardamom, grains of paradise, and that's something like cardamom. It's in the ginger family. Black cumin seed, dried kaffir lime leaves, and cloves. Okay. So it's pretty darn expensive. The good news is you don't need a pound. A little goes a long way. A pinch is enough to flavor or color a pot of soup. I think something like 10 quarts of pot pie, it says on the envelopes we're selling out there, or a pound of rice. I'm sorry, not ice. Okay, and this is saffron growing in my garden last fall. Bees love it, so I usually bring a few bees in with me when I pick it. Get an idea of how it grows. It's very small. You can buy saffron at local stores. You don't have to grow your own. It comes in small envelopes or plastic vials, or It's also available at the Semmelhof table after the talk. And the little plastic vials look like pill bottles. Dutch Way in Schaefferstown sells it, and they also keep it at the checkout counter, so if you want it, you have to ask for it. It's an interesting fact, saffron is classified as a spice rather than an herb. It has a distinctive aroma and a slightly bitter, but pleasant in small amounts taste. And it's a very hard taste to describe. I heard you talking about that. It's hard to describe what it tastes like. It's kind of like you know it when you taste it. It adds yellow color to food. Besides flavoring the Pennsylvania Dutch dishes that we talked about, saffron is used in other ethnic dishes such as Spanish paella, French bouillabaisse, Italian risotto, and Indian curries. And I usually get a question about where to buy this exotic thing. So I went online and found some prices for you. DutchBulbs.com, Etsy has it, Amazon has it, Territorial Seed Company has it, but they were out of stock when I looked. So the bulbs themselves aren't expensive. It's the labor that goes into harvesting it that makes the finished product so expensive. And I find it very easy to grow. Okay, and this is the way it looks at your grocery store, either a vial or a small envelope. And it really, it's a minute amount that you get. Okay. Saffron also has medicinal uses. John Hickernell told me that early in the 20th century, saffron was so commonly used as a medication that it was sold in drugstores, not grocery stores. John had also heard that some druggists would soak the saffron in water, get a nice yellow liquid, put that in a bottle and sell it, and then resell that saffron.
Oh.
The Hickernells recalled being given saffron tea to bring out the measles or to break a fever. And this article that I clipped from the London Daily News, 1916, is saying that there's an outbreak of measles, and the way that health officials want to trace that outbreak is to go to drugstores, have the druggists record how much saffron they were selling. And that way you can get a handle on how bad the measles outbreak was. So one of my informants, Edna Hammer, remembered drinking saffron tea, and she hated it. But she was given saffron tea as a medication when she was a child. And she said she was surprised that she liked it so much now because it tasted so bad then. An informant also told me that saffron was used to bring on menstruation. Other folk uses for saffron are as a gargle for your sore throat, for treating scarlet fever and colds, and for jaundice. And I'm just guessing here, but sometimes folk medicine looked at the color or the shape of something. So this is yellow, so perhaps it would help your yellow skin. And this is one I don't recommend, sheep saffron tea. That's saffron tea made with sheep droppings. Also recommended for curing measles. So besides the folk uses, saffron is still sold today as an herbal remedy. It's available in dry form, in capsules, in tea bags, as gummies, and as a liquid. And on the serious side, it's rich in antioxidants, and there are many claims for its benefit. It's said to aid in weight loss, PMS, erectile dysfunction, controlling seizures, treating depressions, improving vision, and more. So whatever's wrong for it, ailing with you. And somebody told me the last time I gave this talk that she had seen it as a remedy for, wasn't Alzheimer's, but something a little bit more serious. So I told her to go do some research. Saffron can also be used as a dye for textiles. In the past, it was a color preferred by royalty, from the Egyptian pharaohs down to Henry VIII.
What color?
The Egyptians dyed their winding cloths used to wrap mummies in saffron. The mark that men and women use on their forehead in India is sometimes made from saffron. And I did find a reference to Gandhi being anointed with saffron in a ceremony. So it was not just women, it was men.
Wow.
And finely ground and mixed with a little water, saffron can be used as a paint, like watercolors. So where did this come from? Saffron originated in Asia, where it grew wild. From there it spread to China and then to Europe, and by the 14th century it was cultivated in England as well as Switzerland and Germany, where most of our Pennsylvania German ancestors come from. Today, most of the world's supply comes from Iran, which produces 90% of the global supply. It's also grown commercially in India, Afghanistan, Greece, Morocco, Spain, Italy, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. The saffron that's sold mostly in our stores, however, comes from Spain, and it's distributed by Shank's Extracts of Lancaster, and you recognize it by those distinctive yellow envelopes that I showed you. Saffron made its way to Pennsylvania with 18th century migrants. It is said that one group, the Schwenkfelders, who came from Silesia, which is in Poland and Czech Republic today, they came in the 1730s and brought saffron with them because one of their members had a saffron business and he had a warehouse, so he had a lot of it. There's still Schwenkfelder churches in Montgomery County, and they make a Schwenkfelder cake, which is a yeast-raised coffee cake flavored with saffron. So that accounts for the small pocket of saffron use in Montgomery County. But what about the Lancaster, Lebanon, York saffron belt? Where did it come from? And this goes a little bit of the way to answering my question, why do some but not all Pennsylvanians use saffron? This is William Royce Weaver, who is a historian of Pennsylvania German foods. And according to Weaver, saffron had arrived in Pennsylvania by 1730, but widespread use dates to the 1790s. At that time, Jewish traders in Pennsylvania, working with Quaker merchants, encouraged Pennsylvania German housewives to grow saffron as a cash crop. And their thinking was they wanted to export this to the West Indies along with other goods where a lot of Portuguese and Spanish used saffron, and they could undercut the price of the saffron coming from Europe. So they had this cottage industry going. But when the U.S. Caribbean trade collapsed after the War of 1812, Pennsylvania saffron growers were left with no market for their product. Now, so being thrifty, what do they do with it? They're going to use it. So they started using more of it themselves. And as a result, they developed what Weaver calls a permanent saffron habit. He goes on to say that these Pennsylvania Germans came to like saffron so much that they sometimes used it indiscriminately, not always with good results. And this is Weaver, a picture from his cookbook. But when I was doing my research way back in whatever year it was, I was at Penn State. I wrote to him, and he was kind enough to send a letter back describing his what he found about the traders, and then he does describe that later in his cookbooks. So I have not yet found any evidence that saffron was grown widely in our area here for resale in the late 18th century. But we do know that local people used it. Alexander Schaeffer, who was the founder of Schaefferstown, sold saffron in his store in the 1760s, and so did Samuel Rex, who had his store here in Schaefferstown from 1790 to 1807. So people were using it. And even if they weren't growing it as a cash crop, housewives continued to grow saffron well into the 20th century. It had a place in either the traditional four-square garden, or in some cases it was right outside the kitchen door next to the parsley. John and Martha Hickernell told me that their mother devoted one whole bed of her four-square garden to saffron. Saffron is so important and so treasured in cooking that some people treat the bulbs like family heirlooms. Wernersville resident Justin Holsheiser told USA Today in 2017 that he grows saffron from his grandmother's heirloom bulbs. When she had to go into assisted living, she insisted that he dig up some of her bulbs and plant them in his own garden so it would go on. I know a lot of you remember Dr. Bob Klein. He grew saffron extensively in his Newmanstown garden. And his bulbs were also heirlooms, descended from those his grandmother and mother, Merle Klein, had grown in Schaefferstown. In fact, according to Weaver, the heirloom strain of saffron grown in Schaefferstown has an excellent reputation. He says, in the Dutch country, Schaefferstown saffron is considered the best of the best. So you want to run right down to Schaefferstown and plant some bulbs. There have been a few big growers and distributors of saffron in our area. In the early 20th century, John Beamisturfer, who lived on North Market Street in Schaefferstown, sold saffron in small cardboard boxes with sliding lids, about the size of a matchbox, and we have two of them on display at the HSI table. Ordinarily, they're in our Brundle Museum. Now, I got really excited when I read Weaver's quote that Schaefferstown saffron is the best of the best. I thought, okay, this guy's growing good stuff. But then I went to look at our boxes, and I saw that it says pure Spanish saffron. So now I'm in a quandary. I don't know if they just called it Spanish saffron because that was the variety, you know. But even if it was from Spain originally, you know, he's growing it in Schaefferstown, and it was in high demand. The donor of the boxes told us that her parents drove all the way from Cleona to Schaefferstown in their Model T Ford to buy Beamisturfer's saffron. The last big growers of saffron in the Schaefferstown area were these folks, Myron and Martha Duppel. At one time, they grew saffron in their garden behind their home on West Main Street in Schaefferstown. And according to Weaver, at some point, they had a 2-acre saffron bed in Riceville. Now, that's a lot of saffron. And I've also found references to some plain families in Lancaster County growing it. And if you've got kids and grandkids, it makes it a lot easier to harvest something like this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's very backward. But there you can see Mrs. Duppel with her bins of bulbs, and poor Mr. Duppel is planting them. All of my interviewees, and some of you, and almost all of my 40 survey takers confirmed that saffron is essential in certain dishes. Edna Hammer said that without saffron, chicken pot pie looks wishy-washy. Mabel Haig told me a stewed chicken without saffron looks sick. One survey taker said if his wife didn't add saffron to the pot pie, we would divorce. So besides pot pie, another dish that people mention frequently was chicken corn noodle soup. But in fact, any chicken dish benefits from saffron if you are a saffron belt cook. One of our members of Historic Schaefferstown, Mike Elmer, told me that his family enjoys their holiday roast turkey and chicken seasoned with saffron. I came across an account of someone who dipped raw chicken in saffron when she took it to market because it would have a pleasing color and sell better than that sick white stuff. Saffron is also an important ingredient in potato filling, which is an essential component of holiday dinners for many people. Loretta Krall, who I interviewed, told me that you cannot make potato filling without saffron. It makes a world of difference. And if you're a local like me, or I've been here long enough to consider myself a local, you may remember the potato filling that was served at Schaefferstown Fire Company at banquets and carnivals, and they also sold it as a fundraiser each Easter and Christmas. Darla Kroll, whose husband Tom was the cook, and he ran the kitchen at the fire company, told me that they peeled between 1,200 and 1,300 pounds of potatoes for each of those filling sales. And the filling sold out in about an hour. So when I was new to town, I went to the fire company to buy filling for the first time, and I had to wait in line. And I was talking to the woman behind me. And when she learned that this was my first time, she began to explain the reason why the filling was so popular and so delicious was it was made with saffron. And I heard more uses for saffron from interviewees and survey takers. Titus Keller Jr. and his wife Alberta added saffron to their corn pie. Mabel Haig added saffron to her pork gravy. And I also heard the same pork gravy recipe from a Harvest Fair visitor last fall who lives in Millersville. My friend Mabel liked saffron so much that she added it to vegetable soup too, although that's not a traditional use. Anna Mae Grubb and Tom Carpenter both add saffron to sausage and potatoes, just like their mother did. And it's good with noodles. Brenda Siverly Morrow, another Schaefferstown native, described how her mother, Annabelle Kroll Siverling, made brown butter noodles flavored with saffron. Brenda also cooks with saffron, but she lives in New Jersey now and she can't find it there. But when she comes home to Schaefferstown, she's sure to stock up. And she kind of elaborated on this by telling me that when her mother-in-law made noodles for the first time and they were white and sick looking, she didn't know what to do with them. And I guess her husband felt the same way about the yellow when she made it first. So Justin Holsheimer, the guy who got the saffron balls from his grandmother, who lives down in Wernersville, recall his family adding saffron to stuffed pig stomach and stuffed beef heart. He had enough in his garden that he sold it to a Philadelphia chef. And the chef used it to prepare what he called saffron's revenge. This was a dish of braised and shredded local rabbit served over saffron noodles. And can you guess why it's saffron's revenge? Bunnies love it. They will eat the green leaves. Deer like it too, yeah. And voles like the voles. I had a lot of voles in my yard a couple years ago, man. They went after it. So we talked about saffron flavored Schwenkfelder cake, and a recipe for that's on the left. But besides that, most Pennsylvania Germans today don't add saffron to baked goods. And in fact, food writers used to claim that the Schwenkfelders were the only Pennsylvania Germans who did put saffron in baking. It was considered more of a British custom. And the article on the right is from Pennsylvania Dutchman magazine in the 1950s. Edna Evie Heller was a food columnist. And she printed this recipe for saffron fruitcake contributed by somebody from Dauphin County. And she said, well, it can't be Pennsylvania German, because we don't do that, so it must be British. But William Boyce Weaver, in his Dutch Treats cookbook, and the Landis Valley cookbook, both include vintage recipes for saffron and baked goods. So they found some old-time ones that did call for saffron. Weaver claims that Apis cakes, which the recipe's on the left, made with saffron, coriander, nutmeg, and poppy seeds were very common in the Newmanstown area in the 1870s.
In what area?
Newmanstown.
Newmanstown.
Yeah, he's very specific. The Landis Valley recipe for saffron bread is it's a holiday bread flavored with raisins, currants, and citron. And that also was I think there's a date on it there, 18-something. Thank you. I came across also a few examples of pies flavored with saffron. John and Martha Hickernell recalled that their mother made a cheese custard pie flavored with saffron. And the saffron added gave it more yellow color and looked like it had more eggs and it was richer. Martha explained that her mother would brew saffron and make a yellow liquid and add it to the pie. And in thinking about this, the pies may have been a variation on Pennsylvania German egg cheese, which is a custard-like soft cheese prepared from eggs, thick milk, and whole milk, and it's flavored with saffron. Besides the cheese pie, Jolly Molly's restaurant as some of you may remember, in Newmanstown, also made saffron pie. Theirs was a variation of lemon sponge flavored with ground saffron. It wasn't on the regular menu, but it was available by special requests to serve at special events. And another well-known restaurant, Ernie Risser's, in Wilmersdorf, Ernie liked to add a hint of saffron to his snickerdoodles. And he must have had a sense of humor because he jokingly said it gave cookies local color. So saffron is associated with holidays, with special events, festive meals like Christmas and Easter. And my interviewees shared some traditional customs related to saffron. Mabel Haig told me that on Fastnacht Day, her family would dip their molasses-slathered fastnachts in saffron tea. And this tradition, if you've heard Linda's talk, the last session, is also described in Alfred Shoemaker's book, Easter Time in Pennsylvania, so it's a traditional use for it. Also related to Easter, it was traditional for parents to hide hard-cooked eggs that had been dyed with onion shells in the saffron bed for children to find Easter morning. And you can see how long the leaves of the saffron are by spring. They don't disappear until midsummer, so it would be a nice nesting place for the eggs. And okay, there was another picture there, so I just didn't make it. Also, another superstition or another folk use, both Mabel and Haig and Martha Hickernell described tossing the saffron blossoms on the street in front of their house after they took those stigmas out. It was said to bring good luck and ensure a good saffron harvest next year. Do you do that? No, I do.
I tossed them out in the flower bed.
Yeah. Because Mabel was a good friend and neighbor, every year we remember her by throwing the petals out on the street. But sometimes I cheat and just kind of throw them at the end of my driveway because I don't want people to think I'm littering. But anyway, there's a nice image. Martha recalled how pretty the saffron petals looked lying on the street among the autumn leaves because it's October and the leaves are down. Okay, so saffron's expensive. Are there substitutes for it? Well, when one group of Pennsylvania Germans migrated to Kitchener, Ontario, they naturally took their saffron bulbs with them because it's really important. Unfortunately, we saw where saffron grows naturally. It did not grow in the Canadian climate, didn't like it. So they switched to growing safflower, which is what we see on the left there, a thistle-like plant that will give your food color but doesn't add any flavor. And the Hickernells actually even grew saffron in their yard to supplement they grew saffron and they also grew safflower as a substitute. And if you remember Umberger's store in Schaefferstown, John worked there and he would sell the saffron threads, and I bought some seeds from him one year to try. But for some people, safflower won't do. No. Mabel Hay was adamant that it's no substitute for the real thing. Edna Hammer had never even heard of it. They insisted, both of these women insisted on the authentic flavor that comes from saffron. But for some people, the color is what's important. Bruce and Deb Light of Rexmont told me that they add turmeric to their pot pie to make it yellow. And I just heard an anecdote from Brian Nye, who's demonstrating out in the main floor here, and he started to laugh. He told me that when he was a very small boy, his mother was making pot pie. He said she's cooking away all day long, and after a while he saw that she was very upset about something. She's kind of pacing around, and she said, "Just look at how this looks." And she went to the cupboard and she got out some of the food dye that we use for Easter eggs, and she added a couple of drops of yellow dye. And then she turned to Brian and said, "Don't you dare tell anybody that I put this in." She had run out of saffron and she had to make it yellow. Just jumped the boat. There we go. Okay, a discussion mentioning special boxes that Pennsylvania Germans used to store it. Keeping saffron dry and away from air and light is very important. The drier it is, the better, one of my people told me. Now, in our area, the most common saffron shape is this. It's a wooden lathe-turned box with a pedestal base. Saffron boxes made by Joseph Lane, which is the one on the left. He was from Lidditz, and he worked in the 19th century. They're very, very collectible. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands. You know, they're very. He was a farmer, but in wintertime, when it's downtime, he would go out to a shop and make these kind of objects and decorate them. Very, very collectible today. The one on the right is one that was made by John Director of Schaefferstown in the 20th century. They also bring money right now because John's no longer with us. And to give you an idea of the size, that's how big this one is on. Because you don't keep a whole lot of saffron because you don't get a lot of time and it's expensive. So, but, well, most of ours are wood. Alan Kaiser, who is one of the experts on all things Pennsylvania German, not just food, you know, Pennsylvania German culture in general. In his new book, How We Ate, has a picture of a redware saffron bowl from Montgomery County. And I've never seen, and I don't know how he knows it was saffron other than that was the lore that came down with it. And I also don't know how big it is. I suspect it's not very big, because you wouldn't use a, you just wouldn't have a lot of saffron at one time. But regardless of the material that they're made of, the fact that we have special boxes for saffron says something about how important this is to Dutch culture and cuisine. Okay. Getting back to my first question, though, why are Pennsylvania Germans willing to pay so much for it? And before I get into that, you notice there's a coin on the scale here. That was the way it was sold quite a long time ago. So you'd see a recipe for a quarter's worth of saffron, and it was what would balance a scale, which is quite a bit when you think about how heavy it was. So that's what that image refers to. Okay. When I asked John Hickernell if he would buy saffron if he could no longer grow it himself, and he said, yes, we are just so used to it. And the Hammer told me that her husband often said as long as he had money, they would have saffron. And of the people that filled out my survey, only one even mentioned the cost. And her comment was that she swears by Shank saffron and would never buy another brand, no matter how cheap. So, it's important. Foodways are the most enduring of all ethnic customs. Think about it. Even more than language, people tend to keep their food customs when they move to another country, when they go to Canada, when they find themselves in another culture. And they tend to pass those customs down through generations. All the people I interviewed, and most of the people I surveyed, stated that they use saffron in the same ways that their mothers or grandmothers or maybe a mother-in-law did. Folklorist Michael Owen Jones describes eating food as more than a sensory experience. It's more than tasting it. It is a physiological requirement as well. By being met frequently and repetitively, it results in the formation of habit and custom, of performances that in turn may become symbolic. Now that's kind of high-flown academic language. None of us would describe eating chicken pot pie or chicken corn soup as symbolic. But we probably would agree that using saffron perpetuates traditional ways in a changing world. It connects people to their heritage. Even talking about and thinking about saffron-flavored dishes brings back pleasant memories of meals shared with family and friends. So, regardless of price, for saffron-built Pennsylvania Germans, saffron is an unquestioned and essential component of their culture. It's so important and so necessary that they will have it regardless of the cost. And if you would like to hear and learn more, last fall's edition of the Historic Schaefferstown Journal featured an article on saffron, and it's for sale on our table out there. And as I mentioned, there's also small envelopes of saffron for sale at the Zemiloff table. A pinch in each envelope, enough to make 10 quarts of hot pie tonight. Okay, that's my story. And if you have any questions, yes.
Well, one time my wife and I were in Niagara Falls, and there was a colored family with us, and we went down under the falls, and they even were excited about saffron because the man said, "Holy moly, saffron!" But in Upper Peninsula of Michigan, typically on Wednesday, you can buy, there's a certain kind of a sandwich that's unique from, I can't remember the name. And there's also a bread they call it saffron.
Okay.
Saffron.
Yeah, it's definitely used in other cultures as well. I just think I was very surprised because I don't think of Pennsylvania German cuisine as particularly elevated. It's good homey food. And saffron seems like the opposite. So that was what got me curious. Now, see, I know they would, yeah.
One question about cooking with it. Do you actually put the saffron in your dish? Or some places I've read that you put in boiling water and then add the water to it.
You could do it either way. If I'm making pot pie or soup, I just drop the threads right in. But if you're going to make it your filling, you like to put it in some of the hot milk or some water to release the flavor. Something like that releases it. And my friend Mabel, who I interviewed, told me her husband didn't like the way it looked. He thought those red strands were unattractive. So she would put it in a hot liquid and then just add the liquid to it. So either way is okay, but the moisture releases the flavor. Yes?
Are the bulbs not hardy? Because I saw the one photo of the woman with 2 crates of bulbs.
She just divided them.
Oh, she was,
They,
okay.
they spread. I mean, unless the voles get them, they'll spread. And then you should periodically dig them up and spread them around.
May I mention, for all my tulips, I have to put 10 inches of mesh in the ground or else I will not have any.
Yeah,
And I have to also protect them from the deer once they come up.
yeah.
And so, that's the only way I would ever have bulbs like that last.
Yeah.
My regular crocuses, though, do not get eaten by anything, so I'm interested if this one would.
Yeah. They at least dug them up and moved them around, I can tell you that. They were in new places. Let's see, there was a question behind you, I think.
If the pharmacists were taking the saffron and making medicine out of it and selling you the medicine, but then also selling you the saffron, what was left in the saffron strands for you to be able to?
Not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah.
They were gonna make money from it. It was not necessarily a scrupulous way to handle the saffron. Yeah. And that was what John was implying, that, they were trying to wring as much out of it.
Yeah. So it would still turn the stuff, it would still color it? So it
I
would-
imagine there'd still be some more use in it, yeah, I imagine so. It really gives a big color, a lot of. Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much would you actually need to use in a, let's just say, a fairly large pot of chicken pot pie or something like that?
Little pinch.
Like 3 strands? Or?
I guess it depends how much you like it, maybe 4 or 5 strands.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like it a lot, so I add maybe more than some people too, but, it's a matter of taste. You can't overdo it. It gets a little overpowering if you put too much in. It doesn't take much. What Mrs. Zimmerman has packaged out there, I think she says it'll flavor 10 quarts. She's got not a recipe, but she says this is enough to flavor so much pot pie. I think it's 10 quarts.
10 quarts of pot
10
pie.
quarts, yeah, that's what, okay, 10 quarts, yeah. Yeah.
Aside from that cook in Philadelphia that you mentioned, has its use gone beyond our little tiny area here? I mean, if it's so tasty and I know it's expensive, but did it ever become a
in some
fad
cuisines.
or something that
Well, in
they...
some cuisines, yes. I mean, if you make bouillabaisse, if you make risotto, but, they're not Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah.
But if you go across, I'm going to say maybe deep into Berks or, or like, well, Alice Spade grew up in Pine Grove, very Pennsylvania German, but they had never used saffron. So it's very regional.
They use parsley.
Yeah. Do you use parsley too?
They use parsley.
Oh, but do you also use?
Well, I have it, yeah.
Yeah, because I would use both, but,
I use
yeah,
saffron more.
yeah.
When you're talking about the spice in saffron, give us a sample of spicy like cinnamon, spicy like clove.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to smell it?
I beg your pardon?
Here, I can pass it. Why don't you pass it around?
Is this the antique?
No, I can't afford the antique, that's what I wasn't doing.
But is it more used? Yeah. Color?
Is it actually the
I would say both, although some people just like the yellow color.
the little
And
thing that
if
the
you
bees get?
dig into this a little more,
Okay,
there's
the
some
orange
symbolism. It's like
thing there.
gold, and it's rich, so it's holiday.
Yeah,
fair.
there's like a yellow part and an orange
And,
part.
and for some people,
Long,
it's the color's
skinny
enough.
orange
Like,
part.
I don't like turmeric that much, but my podcast is.
I think so. Pretty much.
Well, how do you compare it to turmeric? Turmeric makes pickles
It
yellow.
makes it yellow, turmeric makes it yellow,
Yeah.
but it's got a very different flavor. And I don't like, turmeric is also very much used in medicinal purposes now. I know my mother's daughter
They
described
say it
turmeric
takes
for
a
it. She made it
ton
by
of work
so I can't.
to harvest it.
So it's just a
But,
different flavor. But both make it yellow. Yellow's what you're after, both would make it
I
yellow.
put you on the stuff. Well, it's not all crocus.
Yeah, I know, I
It's just-
don't really smell it. I mean, it's not
I think it's
something
good.
like
Yes.
the wood.
Yeah, crocus sativus,
Another type of crocus.
certain kind of crocus.
I don't poison it.
Yes. Yeah, the fall, there's a fall crocus that's larger and it's poisonous.
But it doesn't produce
It doesn't produce the saffron strains.
Yeah, here, I'll take it over to the
crocus, but
next group here.
but it doesn't produce the saffron. But you
That
have to
fall
be very careful
crocus,
to get
it
the
gives
chivas,
the
not
leaves
something
in the
else.
spring and the flowers in the fall.
No, that's the naked lily that comes, that has the leaves in the spring and
The
puts the flower in the
flowers will
fall.
pop up, your saffron crocuses.
Crocus
And then you
sativus.
pick them and then.
The greens of the saffron come up in October, that's when they produce. And then the greens will grow all winter and they'll get this long and they'll lay over. And then in the end of April, beginning of May, it dies off. And it's dormant over the summer.
Yeah.
That's fall crocuses. We call them fall
That's the-
crocuses?
Well,
Saffron,
that's the saffron crocus.
that's the saffron.
The one that,
Saffron is.
it gets the
only-
big leaves in spring.
Know about that.
No, it just has like a garlic leaf.
Yeah. Like Lisa grass, that's why they were hiding the Easter eggs in it, it was sort of like
You always
grass.
dig it.
Diane, do you ever cut leaves down?
I wait till they, like I would any other bulb, I wait till it's all
I
brown.
not made like in the end of April, can you made to take them out, transplant them.
Yeah, but it is good to transplant periodically.
So what all do you put your saffron in?
I did investigate.
Chicken corn soup, you can even cook it with rice. I love with rice.
It's very good with rice. But like I said, just noodles. Noodles and chicken broth and a little. And it's not used extensively in Germany and Switzerland now, although it was in the 17th century.
And the rabbits and the deer like the greens in the winter. I have to cover mine with wire or they get eaten off.
Yeah, they get
The rabbits like the greens.
Would that kill the plant?
It don't kill it, but it don't produce like it should.
You know, when you cut off the narcissus leaves too soon, it weakens them.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
My great grandma had a big saffron patch in the garden.
Did she?
She was 89 when she died. Now I'm 89.
You have a saffron patch.
I had a big patch. When I moved, I transplanted some bulbs to my place.
And is the flower the size of a crocus?
Yeah, it's like
Some people
it's
don't
purple.
like, you know.
It's a purple.
One more hit.
Yeah, you have to pick your flower off every day. You go pick them off and then take them in the house and then
Yeah,
take
yeah,
your
the envelope is
stuff.
$4, it's a pinch in it, but you'll go through a couple of different dishes, depending on how much you use. Good job.
Thank you.